It's Brian, and I may have missed when she died, but I am here for the funeral. The Galactic Starcruiser is finally officially dead. As of today, September 30th, 2023, there will be no more guests. And according to this guy, it's actually my fault, so I'm sorry about that. But let's talk about what went wrong with the Starcruiser, why it failed, why it's actually not my fault, why Disney didn't really seem to do anything to fix it, and what they're going to do with the building now that it's empty. And they're definitely not going to use it just as a storage facility or training grounds. And this is the part in a video where people would say, like, you know, if you're watching this, only X amount of people are subscribed. My number is so low that I'm too embarrassed to say it. But if you want to subscribe, go ahead, click the button if you want. If you don't, I don't, that's fine, whatever. But let's go. So yeah, 4 months after the announcement initially came out that the Starcruiser would close, we've arrived at that final date. And if you look at the opening date of, March 2022 and the closing date of September 2023, it's a very short period of time. It's so short that there's really nothing else you can say about the hotel other than that it was an abject failure. There's no other way to slice it. And sure, while many people might have assumed that this was an inevitable end for this experiment, I don't think any of us could have foreseen it happening so quickly and in the way that it did. And I think even fewer suspected me as the prime culprit. But, what was his name again? Turk knew the whole time. So yeah, if you ask Turk, it's my fault that the Starcruiser never got off the ground, and not the fact that it's a building with no windows and a $6,000 price tag. My fault. To be fair, in my original video, which I released, back in April 2022 or whatever, I was very critical of the hotel and the business model that they had set forth. But in doing so, I also noted some of the amazing experiences and food options and just opportunities that the hotel afforded to guests. I thought it looked pretty cool. Even at the end of the video, you can hear me kind of contemplating, even though it's expensive, maybe I might do it someday. And I do come to the conclusion that I never would, and I never did. But there is a part of me that recognizes that it is cool. So am I going to be staying at the Galaxy Starcruiser? Probably not. So, yeah, I was critical, but I did see something there. So sure, go ahead and bark at me and other reviewers like me for dooming the Starcruiser for our video essays about it, but it's really not our fault. It's really more than that. At the end of the day, if Disney couldn't get me, a prime Star Wars fan and enjoyer, and someone who has shown a willingness to spend a lot of money with Disney and has a history of doing so, I'm sorry, but that shit is just doomed from the start. I am comfortable saying that I represent the probably core audience of who should have been guests at the Starcruiser. But when I looked at a package, a hotel stay, and I looked at the price of it compared to, I don't know, just spitballing here, like a 5-night stay at the Grand Californian Hotel, they just were not in the same leagues. I could not compare them and justify the Starcruiser over that longer stay. And I didn't when I stayed at the Grand Californian for 5 nights last October. And any time in the history of the Starcruiser while it was operating, if I ever thought about it and went to the website and, tried to price out a vacation, I would always get to the same train of thought. I'd be like, oh, that's really cool and interesting and maybe someday, but not right now. I think I'd rather spend my money on, I don't know, spitballing here, maybe a 5-night stay at Saratoga Springs Hotel, which is a trip I'm doing this fall. So basically what I'm saying is there were 2 opportunities of time where I spent several $1,000s to do Disney experiences.
And from the edit bay, I recognize that I'm very privileged to have been able to do those. I have a great job, great financial stability, and that's not something that everybody can do. And I recognize that I am in a very fortunate position, and I am grateful for that, and I am very blessed. And I never take that for granted.
And the one that should have hooked me, the one that they built, purpose-built to get people like me, they couldn't because it was priced so far above anything else that the value just couldn't compare to other experiences. And so I found my decision was made before I could even really consider it. And when you lay it all out like that, it just really sucks to look at. I wanted this hotel to work. I don't like the fact that it didn't. I don't like the fact that it looks like I'm laughing or mocking Disney for, creating this and failing. But they just completely screwed up. I loved the idea of the Starcruiser from both sides of the story. For cast members, employees who are part of the show, it presents this really amazing opportunity to live in a character and become a role. And beyond that, work with different guests on each different stay. So no real, experience is ever going to be the same. Every day is going to be different. And there's tons of opportunities to work in crowd work and improvisational efforts that just keep every day so fresh. And I think as a former a performer and someone who, does this, that's a really enticing offer and just sounds really interesting. And then on the other side of that coin, for the guests, you're getting a unique experience every time. Plus, you are inserting yourself into this world. You are becoming part of the world of Star Wars. And to be able to do that for a storyline that you obviously love so much, like that is just one of the most unbelievably cool value propositions you can give to somebody. It's an experience that really goes as deep as you let it. And that's something I noted in my first video. If you're the type of person who's able to get the most out of that, to immerse yourself as much as you possibly can, I can definitely imagine the perceived value and entertainment factor being like through the roof, being amazing. But if all of that is true, if they really delivered an amazing experience, why then did it fail? I don't think it should be viewed as a failure of the entertainment product. I don't think you should look at Disney and say, well, they clearly can't make an entertainment product because the Starcruiser failed. They can't have this type of experience. They've shown that they can't do it. I don't think that's true. And by all accounts and reports, it seems like the Starcruiser was a valuable, cherished experience for anyone who was able to go and do it. I think the failure lies more in Disney's interpretation of their own data and not being able to gauge the sort of price flexibility of the consumers that they identified who might be interested in this kind of experience. Add on to that what looked like a complete unwillingness to change the experience or pare things down to make it more accessible, and you just have a recipe for disaster. I don't have a crystal ball. I was not privy to the conversations that were had about the Starcruiser and its failure, and I've never worked in operations on something of this scale, but I do know that when you're talking about scaling down an experience or cutting things, it's not as simple as just saying, don't do that or fire these people. That requires a lot of analysis and work on the front end. You have to research what's going to work, how you're going to cut things back. There are so many different aspects you have to consider. So I do wonder if part of the reason why we got to this end is that at the very top, a sort of snowball from the top where we don't want to figure out the budget for this. We don't want to brainstorm these new ideas. So it looks like we're unwilling to change the price. We might have been, but the budget to figure that out, to figure out what the new experience would look like on a more accessible budget, it's just not worth the research and development costs to get there. So it looked like Disney didn't try to change the product, but they probably, in their current landscape of, cutting budget and cutting staff, they probably just looked at that and said, let's just take the loss. Let's just write it off and be done with it. That allure of just being able to be done with it was probably more enticing than thinking about a future where the Starcruiser is maybe a different product than they envisioned and it is still operating, but it took them months, years of planning to get there. The Starcruiser was really in a perfect storm of being a logistical nightmare to continue as anything other than what it was conceived to be originally. To run the hotel at half staff or half occupancy is really different than just saying we're putting less money in. You have to figure out which activities you're going to cut. You're going to have to completely reschedule itineraries for different voyages, different people who are attending this hotel. In doing so, you have to figure out what the new scope of the hotel is and how to package that and value it for the guest to purchase. And as I've mentioned, clearly Disney has demonstrated they're unable to figure out what the right price is. And maybe part of that is them pricing it at what it is actually valued at, but they clearly misread once that this is not a price people are willing to pay. So I don't know that I have faith, and maybe they didn't have faith in themselves to restructure that and price it again in a way that people might be interested in it. At the end of the day, even though it seems counterintuitive, the best financial decision for them probably was just to close the doors for good.
Especially when you consider the sort of juncture that they were at with their layoff situation and the sort of budget restraints that they were experiencing. Although now they're putting $60 billion into the park, so I don't know. They'll figure it out. They'll be fine. But maybe none of that matters because Turk did say it was my fault. So if I was the reason you saved $5,000, then I am really sorry. Really sorry. But now that the hotel is closed for good, obviously the question kind of shifts to what are they going to do with that building? It's a huge eyesore of a building. What can you do with it? How can you repurpose it, if at all? I think smart money would bet that it gets used for overflow storage of hotel amenities for different hotels around the property, Hollywood studios, items or props, or just anything like that. Maybe break room spaces, training room spaces, stuff like that. Dumber money might bet that it becomes something like a DCP dorm. Imagine those ferocious, rabid DCP students getting the chance to live in this defunct land ass brutalist building with no windows. They are probably already lining up at me just saying that out loud. Someone heard it and was like, oh my God, that's the best plan. So maybe that's an option too. I've heard Flamingo Crossings is maybe a little bit fuller than it should be. And so you may be asking, where do I stand? What do I think is going to happen? Well, I don't think it's either of those. Well, that's not true. I think it's the first one, but I don't think it should be. And I have a plan for this building that I haven't seen anybody propose. So if you'll humor me for a second, I want to take you there. Just close your eyes for a second, and I want you to imagine a big building.
Now imagine that big building also has no windows. Do you hear that? Oh, that sounds like a gym. Get your head in the game. You see, I think another unseen reason why the Starcruiser failed is because of the prevalence already of Star Wars properties within the park. You've got Batuu, you've got Galaxy's Edge, where you can sometimes ride rides if they're working. You have all of the store space and retail space where there are shelves and shelves and shelves of merchandise. But you know what property isn't represented anywhere? You know what property? Or should I say, what team? Wildcats. Give us East High. Retheme that soulless dungeon into an Albuquerque high school in Utah and just give us what we've wanted for so long. Bob, that is a freebie for you. I have a whole plan in my head, but I'll give you one more. Guests who stayed at the Galactic Starcruiser, as part of their package, they got to do a day excursion to Hollywood Studios, to Galaxy's Edge. We keep that idea with the High School Musical property, but instead of going to Hollywood Studios, let's go someplace different. Let's go to Lake Buena Vista Golf Course. Let's channel some High School Musical too. That's a free one for you, Bob. I've got loads more ideas in my head. So just give us what we want. Bring back all the performers. Let us live with them. Relive high school. The glory days for us all. Or just, use it for storage. That's fine too. But anyway, that's pretty much it. Sorry if your hotel died, but you have to admit it was kind of a bad idea. Let's go Wildcats. Bring them back. Okay. Goodbye.